Thank you for joining us on a holiday afternoon. As the moderator has just mentioned, this project began in fiscal year 2018, and this was a 5-year project. However, what the future will bring was something that we had not finalized when we started. So the past 5 years really have been groping in darkness. And as we end this 5-year period, in the first part, we'd like to look at what activities we've been involved in and look at translation in part 2. Which is one of the important pillars of this project. Now, this slide looks at what the Bunka-cho, the Agency for Cultural Affairs, has been doing in the past. As you can see, in fiscal year 2013, for the first time ever in the history of the agency, there was a specific budgetary allocation for contemporary art in order to support museums. And fiscal year 2014, a group to discuss how information about contemporary art should be launched abroad and how it should be introduced or showcased was discussed in a study group where they also clarified some of the key issues that we confront in this field. After that, in creating the framework for the art platform, we referred to these key issues, which were extremely diverse, which were not solvable with a single project, which meant that we needed to go into various directions and also to put infrastructure into place in order to achieve our goals. And that is how the art platform itself developed and evolved. At the same time, I should mention that the contemporary art committee, which looked at the vitalization of the art market, looked at the importance of enhancing the social worth or the social appreciation of art, not just the market value. So it is also looking at artistic and also economic and academic value, which all needed to be boosted. So that is how the working group was formed. And as part of that, the National Museum Art Communication Center, which is a temporary name, was discussed. This was the attempt to create a new art communication center within the framework of the National Museums of Art organization, which brings together all the national museums in Japan. And this was going to allow us to really strengthen and to boost the entire field. In the same year, the advisory committee or the advisory commission established a new cultural economic department, and they established a new working group which was all aimed at stimulating and also promoting art, which was a permanent element, not ad hoc. And there was also the proposal made, or the note was made of the fact that there's probably going to be need for a organizational framework to be able to undertake activities under its own initiative. So the Art Communication Center is going to be established. That's a decision which was made in 2021. And the name has been changed to National Art Research Center. And this will be started up in the next fiscal year. And we now have budgetary applications being made so that we can secure the budget for this. Now, first of all, looking at this clarifies some of the key points. If you look at put it up in Google and ask Google what it knows about some of the key points, discussion, Bunka-cho, then you're going to be able to do that. So there was the proposal made that there should be a summit of some sort about contemporary art. Also, there's a need to create a support mechanism or organization, and that in the long term, if this framework is to be created, then it can be acting as an engine to pull the entire field ahead. Based on that, the art platform itself has been involved in creating networks internationally and domestically. They've also been providing English translations of some of the key texts which have been introduced abroad, and information about the holdings and the collections, which is pretty much non-existent or inaccessible from abroad or in English, has been put together, centralized in a central information hub, and it's now made visible, and people can now have access about the collections. These are all proposals that are made, and of course they're not solvable overnight, but I think we've been able to make very great steps and very great headway, and we have been able to welcome today. This looks at some of the key points about the Cultural Economy Committee, Cultural Policy Committee discussion in 22. Here, notice being made of the fact that the Art Communication Center or the Research Center is going to be established as an organization that will be the primary actor in promoting contemporary art. Also, that activity should be spilling over into all fields relating to arts and culture, including media arts and also design, architecture, and so on as well. That is one of the suggestions that has been made. Also, formation of collections, how we can ensure the continuity of privately held collections. Also, how can we enhance artistic value and appreciation. There's also the requirement which has been noted for promoting and also fostering the ability to appreciate art and to understand art or to look at art. So how to see is something which has not been really emphasized in art education up to now, because art education in our country has been primarily emphasizing the creation of art and making art rather than looking at how to look at it. Now, where we started the art platform, Japan, this is what the Agency for Cultural Affairs had in mind. It was really about creating a system that would make it possible to support the sustained evolution and development of arts and culture. So sub-aims, subtopics would be creating infrastructure, linking together the artists, the works, and also to share knowledge and also information about these artists and the art which is being made. Also, to enhance the international appreciation and standing of Japanese artists and art, to create this virtuous circle, which creates this loop. So these are some of the things which we continue to discuss. And in part one, we're going to be looking at each of the working groups, where we're going to be hearing about the situation from Uematsu, Oda Natsuko, Kawaguchi Masako, and Nariai Hajime, who are each from the National Museum of Art, also from Art Commons, and also from the National Museum of Western Art, and also the Tokyo Museum of Modern Art.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Uematsu from the National Museum of Art, Osaka, and I'm the vice chair. And particularly, I was responsible for the workshops and the events like that, and would like to report to you what has been done and what has been achieved. The slide, please. So as been shown before, the workshops, for the Bunka-cho and with the goal of disseminating the Japanese contemporary art to outside of Japan, the importance of conducting workshops was pointed out, and those who appreciate and research Japanese contemporary art outside of Japan, what kind of information is obtained by them from where, for example, and how to respond to their needs. And of course, we have to make clear to them where they can find the information, and also we have to build recognizable networking, and we should have a place where we can put all the art professionals in one place in terms of workshop, and that was October 2014. And then so far in Japan, contemporary art in Japan has been also shown to people outside of Japan. And with that in background, what we decided to do with these workshops include three. First, the information needed by the specialist should be made accessible because it is not. And we need international networking to be structured, and we need more resources. Number three, museums and universities, they have to have the necessary human and monetary resources to do this, and to make sure that all these three things to be finalized and achieved. English-Japanese bilingual continuous workshop program series has been designed, and also together with that to construct the international network involving all the art specialists. And also one of the goals was to, for example, do that with the at the end of the 5 years of this series of programs, we would like to have sort of the exhibition as the final event. And now what you are seeing here is, there are 10 photographs, and during 5 years, workshops have been done during 5 years. And in order to structure professionals network involving both Japanese, non-Japanese people, and to have the workshop networking to be created, we had the invitational workshops held. And unfortunately, since 2020, because of the pandemic of COVID-19, we had webinar-based workshops in series. And through these programs, the source of information was identified inside Japan, and also the people were linked by networking internationally. And now, here is a map of Japan since 2018 till 2022, which is this year. So this is the 2020 webinars shown here. But aside from that, in 2018 in Tokyo, the first one, and that was done in March 19. And then in the 2019, one in Osaka, one in Tokyo. And then in 2020, we had webinar workshops. And then in 2021, in Fukuoka. And this year in Aichi. which is the 2022 workshop. So this is the series of workshops held. So for 2018 and 19, not affected yet by pandemic of the COVID-19, both inside and outside of Japan, we had a participation from both Japan and the other countries, curators and the other professionals attending, and also we had public programs as well. Therefore, these workshops are quite extensive in covering of the audience. And then in 2018, 1,231 people viewed by webinar. In 2021, due to the pandemic, yes, from the outside of Japan, people had difficulty traveling to Japan. Mostly the participants were from Japan. But this year, we have some people coming from outside of Japan being invited. Next. So 2 to 3 days, that is the length of the art programs, and we cover different themes and subject matters. And here's a list of the participants. And since 2018, is zero deviation in the globalization affected deviation of the contemporary art in a certain direction, narrating contemporary art after globalization. And also Ruben, Kihan, Gabriel Litter, and Mami Kataoka were the speakers. And next page, please. And now, if you go down the list, and at the bottom, this is the one of this year, 2022 in Aichi. And that one is included, the Aichi workshop. And 3 from the bottom, mostly in Asia, Piri, Park Jong, from the, and also Yasuko Fuichi, Japan Foundation before, and the overseas exhibition and discourse of modern and contemporary Japanese art. And then the last one, case studies for generating international dialogue. So these are the programs we had for the workshops we did. And as you can see in the next slide, artists made some presentations. They are listed here: Sachiko Kazama, Meiro, and Koizumi. And in each time, except for 2020, for each art workshop, we also invited artists for them to make their presentations. And by doing that, of course, from Japan also, but from outside of Japan, we could invite the artist, and we could show people the current status of the Japanese contemporary art, and also their affiliation shown here inside of Japan, from Aomori all the way to the south in Kyushu. So it covers all the geographical areas, not just from the museums, but also from the universities. We had those scholars, curators, and from Asia and from Europe as well, from different corners of the world. And then at the end, the feedback we received from the participants summarized on this page. So I also participated in these workshops, and what I felt, it's shown here too. So face-to-face meeting and interaction, which lasted for a few days. Particularly if you're working in museums of art, then you are alone, sitting in front of your desk in your office, and it's very rare to have interaction and discussion with the others face to face. And in particularly, it's rare to discuss with people from other countries. And that was a rare and a precious occasion. And also the networking, which is recognizable, visible, and we have networking possible to be created through the SNS or networking through the webinar, whatever. However, face-to-face interaction in the network, that is very important, which was appreciated by participating in these programs, I think. And then the number 3, Japanese museums of art should not be closed to the world, should not be too domestic. By having the people from outside of Japan with different perspectives, which are different from those of us, and that is very interesting, and from different geographical areas, from different generations, you have contact with those people, which will contribute to the nature of the networking you have with these people. And also what the voices said is that the purpose of this workshop is to disseminate what we do to the outside of Japan, and that's why networking. However, inside Japan, it's also important to create a network inside Japan, confined to Japan as well. For a few days, we continue discussions, and that means we have networking contacts among people in Japan. Of course, we have more occasion to see others in Japan. However, aside from them, it's very rare to do this kind of interaction. So in such sense, for having the few days being shared in the workshop, and after the workshop, even after the workshop, you have the chance to have more closer contact and more closer communication with these people you met in the workshop. So this is the kind of feedback we received about the workshop. But as I said before, during the 5 years of this program, originally what we wanted to achieve with the workshops is that, well, we would like to have exhibitions, the circulating exhibition, for example, both inside and outside of Japan, something tangible we wanted to have. However, we had a very serious impact from the COVID pandemic, and therefore exhibitions, maybe we should wait 2-3 years. However, we could create a networking, and the next step is to do the exhibitions and also publication of the results of the research, which is not immediately available. However, we have the sort of the seeds being born as a result of this program, and we will have again the discussion being shared with you. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Odate-san, if you could report on the translation project. Odate speaking. Thank you for the introduction, and I'd like to give an explanation on the translation project. So if I could have the first slide, please. So as was mentioned, with regards to the points mentioned by the group on overseas dissemination, in Japan, in many art museums, there are many exhibits that take place. However, because of geographical and language issues, very few are directly linked to the moves overseas. And in 2014, there were some issues announced by the Ministry of Cultural Affairs, and keeping that in mind, it was necessary to create translations as well as raise the quality of translations. And so it's not very visible from overseas, and translations require a lot of financial and human resources. However, it is viewed as secondary, and because of the lack of budget, it is often overlooked, and that means that it relies on personal abilities to secure quality. So, as part of overseas dissemination, we started the translation project with this importance in mind. It is an activity as part of the dissemination, but it should not just be one-sided. Rather, it should be to participate in international discourse. In other words, it should be to create a platform that can be shared. And in order to get the positive evaluation from overseas through translation projects, there should be good discussion on both sides. And along with workshop and database projects, we need to find commonality with other countries and other ages. And it's important that research and discussion take place based on that. That means that text should be accessed from anywhere. So you see these themes, and in choosing the text, in other words, to translate and publish, we first chose shorter texts, 100 of them, and then we had the objective to announce them on as PDF. And in choosing the 100 texts, we set these kinds of themes. There are 10 themes given, and in session 2, Kurodaraji-san is going to talk about his Anarchy of the Body, and that was a book that we had wanted to translate from the start. In other words, internationally, the importance of performance and contemporary art is being understood, but there is very little material regarding performance, and therefore, to publish this book with lots of data and chronological tables is very important. There have been approaches from overseas publishers in the past, but because it is very voluminous and for other reasons it was not realized, therefore I felt that there was significance to translate this book in this project. Now, through the platform of Japan, there were a lot of efforts being made because it's a large project, and we needed the efforts of Kuroda-san and the other relevant parties, and I'd like to thank them all here. And you have from Leuven University Publishers, the history of modern and contemporary Japan through art, which is only a part of the work. And you have to have a systematic understanding of the history and the background. And in session 2, Mitsuda-san is going to be speaking more in detail. And the editors, Noriaki Kitazawa and Takemi Kuresawa, in the editing of the English version, we are greatly indebted to you, for which I'd like to express my appreciation. The criteria for the text selection is indicated here, and for each theme. And we had translation workshops in the past, and I've given the same kind of explanation. That is, according to each theme, we get recommendations of text from various experts, and then the selection committee members choose. And we had from post-war to postmodern art in Japan, 1945 to 1989, published from MoMA. And there were the translations already for some observations that are cited historically. So we chose what was not included there. And we had editor Kenji Kajia, who also joined, and we tried to choose the themes and times that were not included here. In particular, we were aware of diversity, and there were only 5 or 6% written by women. And in the translation project this time, we took a quota system to select, so that overall it's 32%. And if you look at what's been published on the web, it's 42%. Not just limited to gender, we think about diversity, and it is a major guideline in the selection. Also, we had the perspective to translate the historical text, but if there are new studies, we also wanted to take that up proactively too. Also, from the start, we thought of new translations of text, but because it's difficult to access bilingual catalogs published in Japan from overseas, with regards to the already translated text, we get permission to put them on the web. And also, for what was not selected, we have a reading list, and it is indicated there. And next, process of translation. And in the translation workshops of the past, as we have mentioned many times, and to put it briefly, one objective of the project is to raise the quality of translation. And in order to do that, it is important that it is work that's not just by the translator, but rather that it is a team structure with translators cross-checking and editing and proofreading. In other words, there's no one correct answer in translations. It's something living, and therefore we wanted a structure where we could consult with each other in the team and resolve issues. In other words, we have repeatedly said that translation is teamwork. And the guideline for the translation, the style guide, is another fruit of this project. And we have some examples of the notations. And we couldn't come up with a guideline for cross-checking and editing, but we hope that if such a guideline could be prepared, the process of translation will be smoother. And also, it is desirable to have opportunities to update this too. And in terms of the disclosure on the web, it is very difficult to deal with the copyrights. In other words, it takes time to reach the copyright holder. And what to do about this is an issue that's not just limited to art. And so going forward, it is something that the Agency for Cultural Affairs needs to deal with. And I hear that the translation will be shifting to the National Center for Art Research. And therefore, with regards to the issues that I've just mentioned, I think that along with new translations, that they can also engage in resolving these issues. And the translation, I'd like to thank those who were involved in the translation and in getting permissions, the translators, cross-checkers, the proofreaders, editors, designers. I'd like to thank all of them, and also the secretariat, which did the coordination, Mie Igarashi, Rena Okubo, Maki Koike, and Mamiko Mochizuki. Without their help, this would not have happened. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Odate-san. So I'd now like to call upon the next speaker, who's going to be talking about the database. The searchable database is what I and Kawaguchi-san will be talking about. I and Nariuchi-san, will be talking about. Now, collections. The first thing that I'd like to confirm that we all understand the same way is that we now have we're talking about a database of artworks, and it covers museums across Japan. And it's being made available to the public from March of 22. The focus has been on modern and contemporary Japanese art, and the total number you can see up here. The total number of artworks involved is more than 160,000. The background to this. There was the point or the observation made about the lack of visibility or visualization relating to the collections. This is something that we have been aware of up to now as a task, But I would like to emphasize that Japan had not simply left the situation as it was. There was involvement. The online content goes back to 2004. This database was made public. Also, from the same time frame, there was this activity called Japan Search, which is about activities which had not been involved or noted up to that point. However, there's still the situation which remained unresolved, where there's a lack of visibility. Now, looking back at the past and past activities, we were able to identify these structural issues. The databases had been left to the individual institutions. And then there was the amalgamation and the bringing together of all the databases that had been made at the individual museums. It meant that if the museums did not provide us with the information, there was going to be no growth. Also, the lack of English information was something which was already being dependent and skewed by whether the museum had enough manpower and will or whatever is required to be able to make it possible. Another point, looking at Japan Search, we hoped that perhaps everything would be resolved at this point. But the thing is, if you wait for a moment, even looking at Japan Search, this was all going to be cross-disciplinary. Looking just at art and specializing on art was a need that perhaps we are going to be able to respond to. Looking at a library database, for example, if you look up Mori Ogai, you can find his name crop up, whether you're talking about his pen name in either traditional characters or modernized characters, or even looking him up by the real name, his real name. So demand for vocabulary control and being able to control and also to provide information based on personal names or was going to be something required. Shuzo is the name of this database, and the key characteristics are, as you can see, the art platform creates the database. The individual museums are asked if they can provide us with data which does not have to be complete. It can just be in an Excel chart or whatever, or Excel table rather. If there is anything which is not digitized, we ask them if they can provide us with paper-based catalogs or lists of works. And we're very grateful to the tremendous cooperation they've all shown us. So the art platform was able to work on that data, and sometimes we created the digital data from scratch. I gave you the example of Mori Ogai a moment ago. Providing data about the artist and information about the artist is something we thought was going to be necessary. Looking at museums A and B, A provides us with information with English transcription of the name, but Museum B did not provide us with an English name, but our platform would be able to supplement that information by providing the English name or English transliteration. And so in this way, the art platform Japan was able to provide tags so that the database was going to be able to searchable by artist name or also by the Latin alphabet representation or transliteration of the names. We've only just started, and we only have 160,000 pieces. However, from this fiscal year, the Art Research Center is going to continue this project. And in this year or so, we've been really working on the handover and the transition. So next month, if the Art Research Center sets up in earnest, then we're going to be needing the handover. And when we started the Shuzo database, the museums were really concerned about what the future of this project is going to be, but we can reassure them by pointing out that we have this clear path for the future. So Nariai-san is going to give you the overall details.
Hello. My name is Nariai, and what Kawaguchi-san said covers everything. I have nothing to add. So 5 years. Yes, this is the last 1 year of this 5-year program. For this kind of the medium range program or long range program, we may say that we did a lot for 5 years, or we did too little for 5 years after all. But in the case of the collection, at least collection was quite successful. I'm proud of that. I think we could develop a tool which is quite useful, and we are proud of it, as I said. And if I am a student, well, I'm not. I'm a curator. But yes, for both students and curators, this is easy to use. This is just a basis, just a foundation. But with all your cooperation, and this was possible, and not possible without it. And I'm sure that it will be further enriched. So, well, in any case, it has to be used. That's all. Please use it, because it's very good. So please use it, and please like it. Thank you very much. Before discussing, as a art platform program, not exactly what was done with working group, but I tell you what was done. So contemporary art in Japan, and it has to be internationally recognized more. That is the purpose of this platform. So the research on Japanese contemporary art was done in Japanese museums. What kind of exhibitions were done, and Nakajima Masashi did this research, and then the exhibitions, list of exhibitions of Japanese contemporary art held outside of Japan by updated by Nakajima, and database in 2 different languages made on it, and galleries were researched, surveyed in Japan for post-war works. What did the galleries do? And 2,397, that is the number of information collected about the galleries, both bilingually made available. And that's since 1945. And this is the survey of art in Japan. UBS in Basel is doing the market research, and according to that, Japan accounts for less than 10%, and US, China account for the or big part of the market. But by going deep into this, we realized that it's because the information was not made available to them from Japan. So it has to be considered that the need of visualization. So since 2018, with these subject matters, we did the research work in terms of symposium, and also interim reports were made by means of workshops and so forth. to share the fruits of what was done with the others. And also, support of the participation in the international exhibitions like Venice Biennale or the others. And we have Japan Foundation. However, the support not fully distributed to different artists, and often some artists had to bear the expenses to participate in the international exhibition. So the support was not sufficient. I think the government must support these artists so that they can increase their international presence. So this is the Contemporary Art Committee research resulted in naming the artists from Japan participating in these exhibitions, and they have to be supported. And we would like to make this more public in the future. So this is the result anyway. So we hope that we make sure that Japanese artists can be more present in the international exhibitions. And about the collection and translation, Art Platform Japan website was created, which was done by the other working group led by Odate-san. And this is the purpose is to publish, and we did not have foundation to do that, so we needed it first. And so the result of the symposium, result of what we did, and the symposium results and the translation. If you go to this homepage of the Art Platform Japan, you will find them. And this is again to be transmitted to Art Research Center. So it's great that anyway foundation was created, but Art Platform website not known. So we had a series of the dialogues posted, which you will, I hope, enjoy. And so as a result of this, you could see what was done by Art Platform project, and we have about 25 minutes left. And those who are on the stage. So, what do you think about the contribution, the fruits of this platform activity so far? Maybe it's just started. It's just very young, but now because of this being born, we see the future directions better, so we can discuss future also. So this project ends now. However, you can make some comment about what you would like to continue to do, your hope for the future.
Thank you very much. And with regards to the workshop, I was able to give a report earlier. And going forward, there will be this art center and the research center, and a lot of the work will be shifted there. With regards to the workshop, I'd like to say, right now, network building is starting. We have laid the seeds, I said. And I think we have some points in existence now, which will become a line and then a plane. And I believe that the individual connections are important. Also, the institutions like art museums and universities, the connection there will become more important. And we talked about exhibitions, in other words, joint planning of exhibits, or inside and outside Japan. the study of collections can take place. It could be what you already own, or it could be something you're going to own in the future. So there are various possibilities, I think, for such joint work. And so going from point to line to plane, I would like to think about that myself. And earlier, the fruit, which is the exhibits, could not be realized through this platform project. But on an individual note, in 2020 in Hong Kong during COVID-19, our collection and also the collection of the Singapore Art Museum, for these two collections, there was an opportunity to show that in the Taika Museum. And because of COVID-19, we couldn't go there, and so we could only view it online. But at the least, within the various connections, and Tobias Berger of Taikan participated in the workshop, and from there, dialogue started. And so having such opportunities is, I felt, very important. Another thing is the invitational workshops. Well, we could say that it tended to be depending on people. You invite people you know. So I think we would want to broaden this a bit further. And also people from overseas. There are some who continue research on Japan, and they had originally the interest in Japan. But then there are people who have no interest right now, but because they are invited and can do research, or they come into contact with collections or translations, and because of that, their interest in contemporary Japanese art goes up. I hope we can create such an environment. Thank you very much. So with regards to the international exhibits, something like Japan Contemporary Art Exhibit, whether we should hold such an exhibit was discussed a number of times in the committee. And Mitsuyama-san, if you look at her list, there are quite a lot of exhibits after the war which were held in Japan. But kind of a compilation of contemporary art in Japan, is it still effective? And as Uematsu-san said, bi-directionally, in other words, to link to mutual understanding, perhaps a form like that would be better. And I think that there is still much to discuss. And with regards to choosing the people for workshops, if it is to continue in the future, there has to be more communication about it. And another thing is Venice and people who are chosen as directors, they could come to Japan and they could deepen their knowledge of Japanese artists and do research. That was another objective. And next year, 2 years from now, if there is a biennial, we could call on such people. So we hope that we can have a good mix between such invitation and communication. And Odate-san, if you would like to speak further. Yes, translation takes money and time and labor. Therefore, the budget and staff through this project was able to realize a lot of things. And a style guide that can be used in the future, and the fact that there could be publication on the website was a big plus. But as I said, translation is a living thing, and you could already have translations from the past, but it might be important to refresh that kind of translation. So we hope that it may not be a Bunka-cho project, but we hope to develop this further. And I talked about the team structure, and we can consult with each other. That's a key point. In other words, well, if what you've written is changed, maybe that's not something that you would want, but you can consult if it's a team about where it's difficult to understand. So I think that with regards to the selection of the books too, there were new members coming in occasionally, and I think that we were able to have a discussion in a very so-called flat manner, and I think that was very meaningful. And also in terms of building a system, I'm not saying that this is the right way, but a lot of people have to be involved in translation, and they did. It wasn't a huge network, but there were cross-checkers who cross-checked for the first time, and I think that knowledge can be used going forward, and not just in the national art museums, but also various researchers. They could make inquiries, and I'm hoping that we will be able to answer their inquiries. And as I mentioned at the end, not just the style guide, but I think that this cross-checking of translation, how can we share the accumulated knowledge? I think that will be the challenge going forward. Thank you very much. And well, it's what was seen to be individual work is institutionalized, or it's done by a team. I think that's a major step forward. And also with regards to the workshop too, to develop the new generation, I think in the art industry in Japan, this is also important. So you work as a team and you also develop the next generation. I hope that things will move in that direction. And also, along with the new translations, the old translations are also being communicated, and I think that's important. If you look at the catalogs of art museums in the past, sometimes they're bilingual, sometimes only in Japanese. So it really depends on the museum. And so there are translation necessary, or there are art museums who've done the translation for a long time, but the catalog itself is not distributed overseas, so you can only receive it at the art museum. And I think that's been the production and distribution of catalogs of art museums in the past. Therefore, I'm hoping that this kind of work is important along with translation. Also collections. Well, translation is very labor intensive, and it doesn't link to profit right away. So therefore, it is difficult to promote as a work of the private sector. Therefore, public funds, I think, needs to be input. But database, likewise, you need to have labor and time, and again, it doesn't lead to profit right away. So that means they have to take time, and first provide a framework, and the fact that we have a framework is very important. Of course, there's still much room for improvement, and may I have your comment? Yes. Well, we as producers want everyone to see our result, but we also see holes, this is missing, that is missing. That's the kind of feedback we get. But improving on this, that's our effort, but also users can provide information and data. So first, I hope that you will use it and get to know about it. And then there are information provision from all kinds of organizations, which is very important. So I hope that will be promoted going forward. It's a challenge, and I think it's just efforts to make continual improvement. Although it may not be linked to profit, but in collections, there is the author information. More than 2,000 authors are registered, and Well, sometimes they're not part of the collection, and it may not be part of a museum collection, but they're important. It could be that because of the genre, it's difficult to collect, but in thinking about Japanese culture, a certain author has to be included. Architecture, fashion, these are other genre authors. And so the names of such artists could be included, manga artists and architecture, fashion designers. Even if it's not included in the art museum, they are understood to be important, and then these are artists that are worthy of being included in an archive. And if people feel that to be the case, then I think there will be a further broadening of the database. I would like to talk a bit about images. Yes, we talk about the lack of image. And I think that was indicated in the symposium earlier. And we explained the situation of having to deal with the copyright. And now we are little by little being able to post them, but maybe a little bit over 10,000, as we saw in the first slide. So I think it's less than 10%, but gradually we are adding to the collection. In the past, it was nil, and so now that it is included, in other words, we had to take care of the legal conditions, and now the legal conditions are met, so we can put them in the database. So all you have to do is send the image. As you see here, it's 161,021 and 13,354 image. So the number, it will be gradually equivalent to the number. Well, it went from 0 to 13,000, so this is a big progress. Artist information, the target was 1,000, but it's already 2,500, and also this 160,000 items is quite an accomplishment, so I would want to be praised by people more. 163 museums, so that we can get more information and increase the number. Yes, right now it is limited to modern and contemporary art, and we get data from 163 museums, 160,000 items, but potentially we have more data on hand. And we had thought about quality, same for translation. And we wanted to have the quality to be able to search the art, and we're going to continue to do that. But we also want to keep in mind increasing the number, and we are exploring that direction.
There's probably going to be an absolute explosive growth at a certain point. Now, thank you so much. And I've been the chair of this project. And it seems as if though I'm in charge of things, but I haven't done anything, in fact. It's all thanks to the individual working groups who have been moving steadily ahead to achieve the goals for their targets. And the Secretariat has been fantastic. They are really magnificent. We've got an astounding team of people who've been supporting us behind the scenes, and it's a group, collective effort, which has all been trying to resolve the issues that we are confronting in the field of art. And it's all about really starting to lay down the railway line to start resolving or solving these conundrums that we have. And even though the organization itself might be changing, we hope that we're going to be able to move ahead. We had a number of questions that have been presented to us beforehand. We can also take questions from the floor. We haven't got any questions from the online audience, in fact, but I'd like to respond to some of the questions we've already received. From the preliminary questions, there have been some voices of concern about whether Japan's culture is going to just start fading away and we're not going to be able to have international touring exhibitions and museums are going to be less active. Hayashi Nobuyuki, the freelance journalist, has been pointing out that art is so diverse, even though we call it Japanese art or contemporary art. Sometimes there is art that should probably not be referred to as art. And is there anything which has been systematically organized or structured in the field that the Agency for Cultural Affairs has been involved in? Well, there's an issue, of course, of whether there's a difference when the Japanese talk about bijutsu, using the traditional word, or they say art with a Japanese accent. And there's a basic law for arts and culture in Japan, and in Article 8, art, media arts, traditional performing arts, folkloric arts, all these other fields have been identified, and it identifies what is involved in each of these fields. However, sometimes you query these definitions, so if we start discussing the definition, the discussion tends to take on a life of its own. So the policy seems to be let sleeping dogs lie. And art itself has been expanding phenomenally in technology-wise as well. So I think that's part of what we're going to be keeping in mind. The Agency for Cultural Affairs, and whether there's a classification structure or taxonomial organization, it's much healthier, I think, to have multiple structures or multiple analyses or ways of understanding and grasping totality which exists outside of an institution. And if we create a database, it's going to be so much easier for all sorts of other places to link together. So it's not about creating a canonical single perspective. Taking accessibility as a given, it's important to note that it's much healthier and much more normal to have multiple analyses and structures. So that's my take on this. It's not something that we can make a decision about. I might be veering off topic, but when the art platform project began, we started with discussion about Japanese art and what it was. This is I'd like to draw your attention to the fact it's art platform Japan, not Japanese art platform. So what is being created or produced in Japan is considered to be what we focus on. And we have been focusing on supporting artists, but we also, or rather I personally hope that we can support non-Japanese artists if they are creating in Japan. So I don't want to really narrow the field too much. That's my personal take on this. Anybody from the audience? Bert Windsor Tamaki happens to be in Japan right now. And you can talk about the workshop. You can talk about what we've talked about so far. Could you please give us, a comment of some sort? Thank you so much. My name is Bert Windsor Tamaki. Well, I've been a participant on many occasions. I've had that privilege. And the workshop, personally, has really given me an advantage in my research topics. I've networked with so many people. I went back to California, and I'm so grateful to the fact that everything has made it possible for me to finish writing my book. And in the future, listening to what you were saying, when I go back to California in April, I had to start teaching Japanese contemporary art to American students. So the information about the collections and the material which is already on the platform website is something that I'm really looking forward to utilizing in my classes. So I'm really grateful to all of your work and your efforts. Thank you so much. Winsor Tamaki has been looking at the topic of Japanese tsuchi, earth, soil. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about this. To pick up on the topic of the definition of art. When you study art, you always get these topics which are not necessarily a part of the art world or art proper. And I'm really interested and intrigued by those research themes. And I was looking at how I started with this basic question: how does earth and soil, which can also mean clay, anyway, tsuchi, how does it interact with art? How does it emerge and how is it being used? It really cuts across different fields and disciplines. So it's art history. At the same time, contamination of soil, bulldozers and how they're designed, all sorts of different elements come into play there. So I really enjoyed this. So I'm really grateful to everything which made it possible for me to complete writing an entire book about this. And there are many people who have comparable takes and comparable interests. And so the scholars, the artists, all those people very generously gave me interviews, helped me with advice. It really taught me a lot. And getting insight into the way that many other people thought is something that I hope I've been able to communicate in this book. So, about Japanese art, or art in Japan, it's a very big category and it's a very big field, but there's tremendous diversity which is so rich and rewarding. So rather than talking about definition, I think that it's better or more desirable to emphasize that diversity. That's my personal thought. Thank you so much. The translation from Japanese into English project is what we did, but there's actually foreign language texts which we hope can be put into Japanese. Also, texts which are untranslated, which remain not untranslated into Japanese, and which have wide circulation outside of Japan, but we don't have access to that, so we are sort of a left out discussion. And so I personally hope that we're going to be able to see more of that kind of translation as well. Online question. I'm involved in creating the database. I think it's also necessary to create databases about exhibitions. There are many artists who actually started out in the rural areas or places outside the metropolitan areas. What do you think about the linking up with places outside the major cities? Would anybody care to respond? Well, concerning the collections, we're calling out to the National Association of Museums, the Zenkoku Bijutsukan Kaigi, and sending the message out very widely. Anything which can be considered to be held in the public, by the public. So public collections. We're not just looking at the local authorities or cities, towns and villages. We're also calling out to other people as well or other organizations. But it might be a bit difficult to identify the contact points. So we're going to try to make it easier for people to understand where to go to. University collections, are they not yet, I think? We've started reaching out to them, but we're still in the process of asking if people would be able to give us help and support us. However, we do have a contact form, so anybody who has a query, if you are interested, definitely please let us know that you're interested and we would like to respond. Exhibition databases, that's part of the other projects. The list of contemporary art exhibitions in Japan and list of overseas Japanese contemporary art exhibitions. The lists have been completed, but there just remains basic information. I personally think that the exhibition history would also be important, and it would be history that people need to learn about. And internationally, it would also be important for people to learn about what kind of things have been studied and what kind of exhibitions have been organized. I think it's about time to wrap up. No more online questions for the time being? If that's the case, then I think that as one of those involved in the art platform project, I really would like to take this opportunity to thank and also show my appreciation for the tremendous dedication and the care which people gave to this project. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. This is the end of part 1.